Welcome to Ping After the Podcast, and Jay. How are you doing?
Doing great, thanks, Nana. Hope you're well too. Thank you for having me on.
This episode, I think, is going to be very, very good. I'm so excited. I reached out to you for a while ago, and I'm so happy that we're doing it. So, yeah, thank you for asking as well how I'm doing. So, who is Jay?
Yeah, who is Jay? Well, like I said, great being on, Nana, and yeah, glad to finally jump on with you. I know it's been a while, time in making. So, bit of background for your audience and yourself. So, based just outside London in the UK, operate different property strategies. Been doing property for a good while now. Uh, obviously strategy that we've been doing is for cash flow that we'll talk about on this podcast is back-to-back leasing. But aside from that, we're doing a lot of development as well. So we do commercial to residential developments in the southeast of England. And alongside that, obviously, development is more of a longer play. It's a profit play, assets as well. We were looking for half decent cash flow strategies that we could implement to really sort of gear up that cash flow. And that's where sort of the back-to-back leasing came about.
Nice, nice. So you a bit everywhere. You're good. You're smart. You're smart with your money and your time, I guess. So
Yeah, I think I'm all things property is how people have labeled me. But yeah, I love property, so it's my go-to.
yeah. So if we touch a little bit of the rent to rent or the lease contracts, how do you go about them, and why did you even start doing these rent to rent and lease?
Yeah. So I'll start at the beginning and touch a bit on the background, like how it came about, just to give a little bit of context. I'll just
Yeah.
give the short version. So as I just mentioned now, especially prior to getting involved with back-to-back leasing, I was fully involved with doing, residential developments. And it was actually a development. We had a commercial to resi development that we were doing for 14 units. We had a sale agreed at full asking price as well. So a multi-million pound sale, which was all brilliant. And then we had the dreaded C word turned up. So we had COVID, and COVID caused our buyer to just pull out. So the buyer, just to give context, was a housing association. So as we call them as providers or operators. And see, no one knew, including ourselves, how long COVID was going to last. So I just thought, right, we'll be back in business in a few days, maybe a week. That's fine. But in the meantime, what I wanted to do is just find other providers just in case these guys didn't come back. So I thought, well, these guys are interested. They paid top money, asking price on 14 units is good going. And they're going to buy the whole block. So I didn't have to mess about with, finding 14 individual buyers. So that really attracted me to work in that space to find another provider along them lines. So I kind of say COVID was obviously a blessing and a curse, right? Because I lost a buyer for the full block, but at the same time, the pandemic gave me this opportunity because that's where when I was doing the research, we came across some operators that were looking for, long leases. And during that time, and I'm sure, you could probably relate, we had loads of empty houses for some clients that we worked with in our HMO management agency that were just telling us, look, we've got empty properties. And it was actually from that the back-to-back leasing was sort of born, if you like. And our first client was a student landlord. He ended up giving us 6 houses straight away. So we had 30 empty rooms. And that's where we put it together with the provider, the housing association. And that's where our first sort of back-to-back leasing sort of contracts started materializing.
Wow. Okay. Very, like you mentioned, a blessing in disguise.
A blessing and a curse, yeah. Do you want me to go on about? I think you mentioned as well. You want me to just outline a bit about the contracts as well,
Yeah,
just how
yeah,
that
yeah.
works?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. So I'll just try and make it really simple because some people do get it, some people don't. So as I mentioned, you'd effectively take a lease on a property that you don't own. So whether, like that example, the student landlord, that would be one. You'd then find an operator who is a third party. So they'd want to lease that building from you. You're sitting in the middle. So you have a lease with the landlord and you've got a lease with the operator. So you're leasing it to them. And that's where essentially why we call it a back-to-back lease. We put those two leases together. Both parties are happy. You're giving one what they want, the other what they want. You're sitting in the middle controlling it, and then you have your margin in the middle.
Smart, smart. So yeah, I'm just blown by how you do it, etc. And uh, like if we just go forward, because a lot of people just do like the normal rent to rent, the do
Yeah.
the service accommodation or HMO or etc. What do you think in this market? Is that something you do, or have you done it, or have you just left it out and just
Yeah.
concentrating on these back-to-back leases?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a great question because there's no denying right now the rents are going through the roof, right? Um, and that's where it comes down to, like, our target audience. So we're not looking for, and we don't target landlords who've got, what we call A grade stock. So, like those all en suites, like, newly done, like really fresh. They're the things that you want to consider, is that we're looking for what I'd call experienced landlords, but they've got the sort of B, C grade stock, So they're typically your landlords, or the avatar that we call them. They've been in the game for a while. They've made their money out of the property. They've got the assets. So they made it, and they're coming back around. To come back round, sorry, to get back to that A grade stock, they're going to need to spend 20, 30, 50,000 pounds per property. And they just don't want to do that to bring it back up to the market. They're happy to have a constant, secure, regular income. They understand their property is not going to command those high premiums. So they're who we tend to work with. And it works well because the properties work well. They're fully functional. They're just not that A grade stock. And that's perfect for the operators that we work with. So again, it's sort of matchmaking in property, if you like.
Yeah. And do you foresee any refurb or anything, or is the operator who's doing all of this stuff?
Yeah, so again, great question. So with these refurbs, I'd say the main thing is it's all about compliance. So where some properties might need compliance upgrades, and what I mean by that, that might be potentially some fire doors, the smoke alarms in the UK recommended interlinked smoke alarms, whether it's HMOs or a family unit. So it's just putting those upgrades in, and then typically, because the leases are anywhere from 3 to 7 years, we, if needed, would do a light refurb. And by a light refurb, I mean paint it throughout, add new carpets. But that's about where it stops. We wouldn't go in and start spending money on new kitchens and things like that, which I know I've seen certain SA operators and certain rent to renters do, which I'm not trying to not the strategy, but I think with this, it's that's another bonus here. You can get in with, as we call it, minimal capital, but really high cash flows on some of these deals.
So so basically, like let's say a deal that you've done, that how much did you put in basically, and how much did you get each month? Like just like an
Yeah.
example, a case
So
study.
I'll give you a case study on one that comes top of the head, just because everyone like loves it when they hear it, because it's not it's a big property, but we didn't actually we had a client who wanted to turn it to a HMO, but I just saw an angle on it because it was such a large property, we could place it to a larger family. So families that have got more kids, etc. So we didn't have to go down the HMO route.
Yeah.
The client was happy because they saw the benefit, because again, like I just mentioned, with landlords bringing it back around, you're spending 40, 50,000. So we saved them that. We we agreed a rent-free period of 2 months. We spent just shy of 5K. I think it was a 4.5. So again, compliance,
Yeah.
light decoration. Our lease fee with the landlord is agreed at £2,000 a month.
Yep.
Our lease with our operator is 3,800. So that gives a margin there of 1,800 per month.
Wow.
We've got that for 5 years, so 60 months. So if you do the maths, and I hope I've got this right, your viewers might correct me. I think it works out at 108,000
Yeah.
over the 5 years.
Wow. And you don't stay, they pay for the bills, this family, right? Or the
Yeah.
operator or whatever.
Yeah, so let me just go into like the real benefits for us and what hopefully again your audience might see the value. So the best way I compare it is your normal rent to rents, right? So if you've got a 6 bed property, typically you'd need, let's just say a 6 bed HMO, you'd need to go out and find 6 tenants. So number one, you don't do that. You're dealing with one entity, one company, tenant management, filling in the rooms, etc. That's their issue. And like you rightly mentioned, also is bills, which, as you know, bills is through the roof. We're only just coming into winter now, so it's still, believe it or not, the sun is shining still in England, but not for much longer. And when that kicks in, when the cold kicks in, the bills will rise. Again, that's the beauty of that, is that we don't pay any of the bills. So they pay the bills, they deal with the tenants, they deal with the voids, they deal with internal maintenance. We really do have quite a limited remit, so it works well from that perspective.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. So basically, this is really like a hands-off investment, or how would you say it? Or do you need to like have a not relationship, but you know, call with the agent or the entity that you mentioned? Like, do you have like
Yeah.
monthly call with them or whatever, or is it
Yeah, so
set and forget?
so I'm yeah, so it's about this. I think in property, people are looking for that passive income. It's not passive as per se, but I have done rent to rent as well previously, and I can obviously could just compare it based on my experience. It's a lot more passive than rent to rent. The calls that we have come up where there might be some issues with what is under our remit. So under our remit might be heating, hot water. So it's quite simple. Then that we've got a system where we can just send out an engineer to go and have a look at it, and then anything external, which anything to do with the roof, that sort of thing. But for us, that's minimal. I don't think we've ever had a call out for anything external over. We're coming up to 2.5 years, nearly 3 years now, and we haven't had anything from that. So it's a lot more passive, and it can be, that also opens up the doors to then manage it remotely.
Yeah, yeah, because that was the thing I was thinking about. So would it even work if, let's say, if you would put a letting agent in this, would that even work, like the figure wise? Or you
Yeah,
have,
so yeah, with letting agents, you can definitely put their figures into the sums, especially if you're negotiating with an agent for a property that you've seen through them. You obviously don't want to take away their management agreement that they've got with a landlord, but just a little tip with that, if you're going to be doing the management for them, and they're uh, business savvy, they want to do deals, then whatever their management is, they might be happy to just cut that in half, knowing that you're going to be doing the work. So it's all, again, it all comes down to negotiation, which
yeah,
takes time, but it's definitely room to do that there with the fees.
yeah. So let's move over to the property demand, the
Mhm.
current market, because as you are aware of, it's really a high demand in the UK. And um, what do you think? What should people be doing that are doing like rent to rents and etc.? Should this be the thing they will focus on, or should they do something else? Or what's your take?
So I think regardless of whether people are interested in, back-to-back leasing, rent-to-rent, rent-to-service accommodation, for me, I think all three of those strategies, one thing that resonates with all three about what to focus on is looking at the circumstance of the property owner. So have a look at, what's going on with the landlord. Why would they want to consider, like a long-term rent and have that assurances? It's for the sort of reasons I mentioned before. These experienced landlords, for instance, they've been in the game for years. They're not too fussed about, they basically value time more than money. Yeah. So when you've got someone like that, they're happy to take a reduction on what might be market rent, knowing that they're going to have regular income and just not have the headache of the day-to-day management. Yeah. So that's typically what we say is that, we're not looking to make this work with everyone. If there's someone who's just bought a property, has never managed a property, we've taught people out of it and said, look, we recommend that you do it yourself, gain that experience. Because I think from experience is where certain, pain points can come. I've owned HMOs myself, and I've more than happy to lease it out rather than get involved with the day-to-day management all the time.
You tired of it, huh?
Yeah, I am.
so so uh so that was a good question. And regarding rent HMOs, because that is like basically the most uh struggling now in this market. What I've been seeing, the deals with rent HMO, they don't stack. Do you see any future of that in the rent space?
Yeah, so again, I haven't looked too much into the numbers in terms of stacking, but what I would say, I think the challenge for me that I've seen over the years from when I started doing it, and I don't know how many years ago our first rent that we took on, but having a look at where I started when it wasn't really that common. I mean, people were talking about it, but now like rent to rent is everywhere. But I think the main thing that I think people should focus on is how how do you stand out from the crowd in terms of, from a reputation perspective? Because I think rent to rent hasn't got the most positive reputation. I think there's too many people who do it out there who then, you know, for whatever reason just don't make it work, but then the liability falls back on the property owner. That really is, as we see, quite unprofessional. So I think if you can really focus on the professionality and just standing out from the crowd who might not have that positive reputation, I think that will in turn bring about deals to you.
Yeah, because that's exactly what I'm seeing,
Mm,
in like deals that doesn't stack, but people take them, and I'm like, but it doesn't stack.
yeah,
You must have like 100% occupancy level, and we all know in a HMO you're never gonna have 100% occupancy all the time
exactly.
because there's gonna be
Yeah,
some turnover, and
sure.
yeah, so, but yeah, that was a good answer. And what about, or do you have any service accommodation deals?
No, so I have done service accommodation before. So we had a couple of units in a block a few years back. So I have done it. We don't do service accommodation anymore. I think it is good. I think obviously I've known people who've got some really successful businesses. For us, we just felt it's quite time intensive. I mean, obviously we only had a few units. I think if you get to a good handful and 10 units, you can then set it up as a real, as a business with systems and processes. But I think first and foremost, service accommodation is, it's about service, it's about customer satisfaction. You're competing with hotels, which is all about hospitality, and that's the sort of market that service accommodation is. And like I said, I think it is quite time intensive. So it's not our focus. It hasn't been for a while. But yeah, we're not involved in that space for those reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So, so what advice would you give people who would like to do this and live abroad, like me and the
Yeah.
majority of the listeners?
Yeah, sure. So I think with this strategy, or whether it's rent to rent, I think firstly, just have a think about really understanding what your goals are. So what I mean by that is, this is a cash flow strategy. So if you can really nail down as to what your number is, what your target is, and why that is, from that you can then reverse engineer to really work out roughly how many properties you want. And the reason why I think that's important is it will focus the mind. A lot of people say you want to get involved in doing, rent to rent or back to back leasing. It's like, great, why? And, I think that why is important, but then putting that alongside what that monetary target is can then allow you to understand, right, I need 3, 5 properties that will get me to my target. That will really give you that motivation and then also that discipline to be like, right, that is my first target. And it really does focus the mind. So I'd say that would be my advice for whatever strategy your viewers and listeners are keen on exploring. Have a look first at what that target sum is, and then you can reverse engineer to see how many properties that looks like.
Good answer. Good answer. So I have two following questions if you don't have more, but I'll ask these first. I always ask these to our guests. So, what books or book would you recommend to read?
Oh, it's a great question because I do when I get a chance love reading Audible. If I had to give you an answer though, it's got to be anything Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn
Oh,
is up there with, if not my favorite, easily top three. And if you're pushing me for a book, a recommendation, The Art of Exceptional Living, it's one that I tend to revisit every year because it's just one of those books, especially on Audible. You will just pick up new things over and over, and it's Jim Rohn is just a great guy. He's like someone I'd love to have met him, but yeah, his teachings are up there, phenomenal. So yeah, that would be my go to.
yeah, I totally agree. I usually listen to that book, chapter 8, with Jim Rohn every 2 weeks. I have it like on a reminder on my phone.
Oh,
He's
brilliant!
he's so great. He's so great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay,
brilliant.
that was a good one. For you, I think you're the first to have said Jim Rohn because usually people say like Tony Robbins. I'm like Jim Rohn was his mentor, and yeah,
Exactly,
Jim
exactly. Yeah,
Jim
yeah,
Rohn
yeah.
is like yeah, I like Jim Rohn more, but yeah, Tony Robbins is good as well. But yeah, uh, if you had unlimited funds, who would you like to have as a mentor?
Oh, I'd probably say a couple of developers. So like, PLC developers. So Barclay Holmes is he's now sadly not with us. He died last year, I believe. Tony Pidgley. I'd like to spend some time with him, some mentoring from him. I think it would be brilliant to understand from a standing start how he grew what is probably the biggest development company in the UK, Barclay Holmes, is like, how his story and how he got there would be brilliant. That would probably be my choice for a mentor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's some big players.
Yeah.
Okay, so final words. What do you have anything you want to add before you drop your details and people can reach out to you?
Yeah, so I think with any property strategy, including back-to-back leasing, just remember, slow and steady wins the race. You won't be an overnight success, in terms of finding suitable properties and operators. I mean, you might, some of your viewers might turn around you and say they've done it, which is great, but I'd say take the advice of, understanding that slow and steady wins the race. If you've got the perseverance, you stay consistent with your actions, you will achieve what you set to accomplish, but treat it as though it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, that was some great final words. I'm so delighted that you took your time and answered all of these questions. And what are your details if people want to reach out to you? And yeah, maybe if they can try to reach out.
Yeah, so I'll send you details if you want to put it in the show notes. But it is if people want to find out more about back to back leasing, we're on Facebook, back to back leasing, Instagram, back to back leasing. I'll also drop the URL, but it is backtobackleasing.co.uk. And then I'll also put my personal socials in the show notes, but it is literally just my name, and they should be able to find me online.
Yes, great. So that people, that has been Jay. Do I say do I say correct? Chauhan.
Yeah, Jay Chauhan, that's it. Yeah.
Jay Chauhan. See, I can. I know. And I'm Nana, and this is Pengafed Podcast. And don't be stressed. Invest, people.